Hey everyone, it's our new YouTube channel here, the Arena Docs, and we're excited to be bringing you spoilers for Innistrad Crimson Vow. New spoilers dropped over the last couple days as well as today on Halloween, so we're really excited to jump into it. If you like what we're doing, stay tuned over the next few days and weeks here. We're going to be releasing our set reviews for Limited and Standard, as well as many Crimson Vow drafts as we get up to Mythic. So stay tuned.
As we get up to Mythic, hopeful. Anyway, Cemetery Protector is our first one here. So 2 white for a human soldier creature mythic rare with flash. It's a 3/4, so when it enters the battlefield, exile a card from your graveyard. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, you make a 1/1 white human creature token. Now, this is a card, in Limited, that's obviously going to be strong. You're going to get card advantage through those 1/1 tokens. Having flash, you can eat a creature. Those are all good things. It requires a little bit of setup, but again, in Limited, you've got time. You've got plenty of graveyard there. So I think overall, it's going to be probably a first pick in Limited. And then as far as Constructed goes, we were talking about this a bit before the video. 4 mana is a little, like that white deck is so aggressive and so fine-tuned. There's another rare that we'll be talking about in just a minute, which we think is a high contender. But this one might be a little bit on the slow side and require a lot of setup for the payoff that it offers. So, we'll put that one in the maybe category in terms of Constructed, but definitely a Limited card, no question.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think Limited, this is a bomb. This is at least going a 2-for-1, creating creatures. But like you said, the white aggressive decks right now, this is just far too slow. 3/4 body is good, but most of these cards are kind of capping out around the 3 converted mana cost area. So I'd want a lot more for a 4 converted mana cost card.
Yeah, and not to mention, if you're in Constructed, if you went first, you might not have any cards in the graveyard. You don't have that time to wait, because usually by the 5th turn, you're either winning or losing. And then you lose the, the flash ability. Because in a mono white deck, you're realistically, maybe not waiting your whole turn with 4 mana open. You really want to be playing things and attacking on your turn. Anyway, sounds good.
Yeah. Next, we're looking at the first Planeswalker, Chandra, Dressed to Kill. It's 3 mana total, 2 red. Comes out with 3 loyalty. So has 3 abilities total. The first one is a +1 ability. You add 1 red mana, and she deals 1 damage to up to 1 target player or Planeswalker. I think this is reasonable. It can ramp you from 3 mana to 5 mana on turn 4. And being able to ping something and can get rid of some of those small token creatures or make blocks difficult. The next ability, though, I'm much more excited for. The +1, exile the top card of your library. And then if it's red, you may cast it this turn. I think that's quite powerful. Obviously, this is going to be in a mono red deck playing it on turn 3. So hopefully on turn 4, turn 5, you're drawing extra cards. The -7 ability, I don't think you're going to get up there too often. Exile the top 5 cards of your library. You can cast red spells from among them this turn. You can emblem with, whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast the spell. Obviously a blowout. If you can get to the ultimate, it's going to be super, super powerful. I think it's more likely going to be using the first 2 abilities. So does this see play? I think in Limited, obviously Planeswalkers are great. I think it's going to see play. It doesn't protect itself, which is a downfall of a lot of these Planeswalkers. But at 3 converted mana cost, even if you can get 1 or 2 extra cards in exile that you get card advantage of, red decks often lack this. So I think it's to be determined if it'll see any play in a kind of a mono red aggro deck.
Yeah, it's probably more like in the big red style rather than like the, because you have the mono red decks that are like the Goblin, all systems go forward, doing as much damage as you can right off the bat. This might fit a little bit more in a shell of like a big red, where you're looking for those higher casting cost spells, like tons of damage to the face. The -7's obviously a blowout, but the bottom line is in a mono red deck, you might not want to spend your 3rd turn just playing a card that basically does nothing on that turn, assuming you've already played a land. Actually, speaking of which, I kind of misspoke there. You only get that land advantage with the +1 if it's red, and lands are colorless. So anyway, moving on. Okay, next we've got the Geralf, the Visionary Stitcher for 2 and a blue. It's a legendary human wizard, and this is a 1/4. So he has that fun ability that they had in the teaser, which is that zombies you control have flying. So for 1 and tap, you can sacrifice another non-token, create an XX blue zombie creature, where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So kind of the same thing we were saying before. I mean, you could theoretically make, a constructed zombie deck. Maybe black, blue. I don't think it's going to be tier 1 in any case, but same thing with limited. If this format for draft is anything like the previous format, this is probably going to be a really nice rare to get in your first pack. Then you build around it with your black-blue deck. And same thing. This is the perfect way to use those 2/2 zombies with a die at the end of the turn after they attack with decayed mechanic. And so basically this is, probably just a limited card again, but cool. And the flavor is neat too. Love the those little electrodes he's got going there. Anyway,
yeah. I'm on the same boat. I think this is an okay card in limited. I don't think it's great. It's definitely a build around, and I haven't seen the cards there yet from the spoilers to say that there's enough to build around this card. And I think it's kind of janky and constructed. I think if you want to have some fun with some flying zombies, you can do it, but I don't think this card's going to see a lot of play.
And you were Mr. Janktown, so
I do love
my Jank.
I do love my Jank
after all.
Looking at the next card here, I'm a huge fan of this card. Helana and Elena Partners. It's 4 mana, a red and a green. Legendary creature, human ranger. Comes out as a 2/3 first strike reach. So out the gates, 4 mana for a 2/3 first strike reach isn't terrible. Obviously, that's not constructed playable, but that's quite good and limited. But it's the next portion here, that at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Helena and Elena's power. That creature gains haste until the end of turn. So at a minimum, if this isn't being spot removed, you get a 2/3 first strike reach that gives another creature at least +2/+2 and haste. So I think this actually has a pretty good home in Gruul. Limited bomb. I could see it getting some construction play.
For sure. And I think the fact that it actually does something the turn that it drops, so if they don't have instant speed removal, it's actually going to do something relevant. Maybe the one downside is that so it's put X +1 counters on another target creature you control. I think if it was any creature you control, it could do it with itself. That would kind of put it over. But I would say it's going to be at least, a medium playable if this deck, the red-green kind of Gruul with maybe Tovolar, finds a home. Reach is nice. A little surprise reach in there to, especially in limited is always nice.
I'd actually say, before we go on to the next card, if it could put counters on itself and give itself haste, that'd be busted. A 4/3 first strike reach with haste that gets bigger every turn exponentially,
which would be a 4/5 haste reach.
And then it'd get another 4 counters the next turn. Mm-hmm. That'd get out of control way too quickly.
Yeah. And I think, he partners well with the idea of that Reckless Stormseeker, where it's, you put, whatever creature you want gets haste. So it's a nice way to duplicate that ability, so you get a more reliable version of haste for whatever creatures come down, provided you don't get board wiped.
I'm a big fan of this card.
For sure. Okay, next one. Hallowed Haunting. 2 white for an enchantment mythic rare. So as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have vigilance and flying. Always nice, but quite a high price. And whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit cleric creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of spirits you control. So it's a little bit reminiscent of that skeleton horde card that creates more and more skeletons at the end of every turn, and then the more of them that there are, the bigger their power gets. But seven enchantments. This is pretty obviously one of those kind of build around cards. It could see more play in some of the older formats where you have more options for cards. I would be shocked if there was a constructed deck that used this. I can't think of it. Same thing, with limited, unless you've got a really, really dedicated deck where you're casting a lot of enchantments, which I know the backside of a lot of those disturb cards actually do make enchantments now, in some of the commons and uncommons that we've seen. In that case, maybe, but yeah, I don't think it's definitely in any case, in any format you played, it's a build around.
I think this card is trash. If I open this first pack, I'm looking for a removal spell. I'm not looking to build around this card. Even if you get a strong build around, getting some extra spirit tokens, I don't think it's worth it at all.
Yeah, I mean, so I think I've played a lot more of the limited format, like the previous limited format of this Innistrad block. I mean, right now there is the blue-white Disturb deck, which is, probably the highest win rate deck in the format in terms of limited. And you do end up disturbing a lot. So, I mean, we'll have to see what the set looks like to see if there's a lot of reliable enchantments. Because, I mean, if this gets activated, 4 or 5 times, I mean, those are going to be gigantic spirits. Anyway, so we'll keep rolling here.
Next is Kessig Wolf Rider, 1 red for a creature human knight. Comes down as a 1/2 with menace. Has a tapped ability for 1 red and 2 colorless, where you exile 3 cards from your graveyard and you get to create a 3/2 red wolf creature token. I'm actually a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of this in both limited and constructed. I mean, a 1 mana 1/2 with menace is reasonable. It's good in an aggressive deck that red decks often want to be. And then kind of when you start running out of gas, you can start kind of refilling your board. After they've spot removed your werewolves or your other cards, you can start getting 3/2 wolves out of this. I think it's a great card.
I just read the flavor text as you were reading that. I'm a big fan. Partnership with the wolf. The wolf gets the scraps of any vampires we catch. I like that. Card itself, maybe I'm a little bit less hot on it than you. I think, you can't, like, if you're in that really aggressive low-cost red deck, 1/2 with menace that has an ability to create more and more creatures as the game goes on, that's great. As far as limited, I think it's going to be much better in the limited format because for that ability to go off, you got to have a lot of cards in your graveyard, and it's like, again, constructed is so fast, so aggressive and so fast right now that getting, more than 3 cards, or 3 cards more than once in your graveyard to activate that ability is going to be tough. Not to mention 3 is expensive, I mean, if you're out of cards, your hand is empty. I mean, that's good, but I'm thinking more limited overall.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Right on. Okay, this guy I like a lot. Not that I like to play against, the blue-red turns deck, but I think he might see that. He might see play there. Anyway, this guy's called the Manaform Hellkite for 2 red creature dragon mythic rare, non-legendary, which is great. So he's 4/4 flyer. So whenever you cast a non-creature spell, which you're doing all the time in blue-red, create an XX red dragon illusion token with flying and haste, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast the spell. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. Now, of course, you throw down an Alrund's Epiphany. That's going to be insane. You're going to get 7 damage in the air, not to mention the 4 from this. But that, maybe that would fall into the bucket of win more. You'd have to be already, if you have a 4/4 flyer on board and you're casting an Alrund's Epiphany, you're probably already going to win that game, right? You've made it through and you're going to get to the late phase. So, but at the end of the day, you pay 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer that if they don't answer, there's going to be like a crazy amount of power in flying and haste. I think it's pretty good. I'd have to look back at the mana curve in the blue-red deck to see how it fits. But, it can block, it can attack, and it represents a kind of a must-answer threat. They kind of have to remove it or that's game.
No, I agree. Obviously, in limited, this is a bomb. You're going to first pick this every time you see it. The question is do you think this can outcompete Goldspan Dragon? Kind of fills the same spot, gives you a hasted body one way or another. Both are kind of in that 4/4 range. Whereas Goldspan is going to ramp you to the all runs. It's going to ramp you to have counterspell magic available. Whereas this on its own isn't doing much. Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts? Do you think it'll outcompete Goldspan for a spot in the Is It Dragons, or do you think it kind of falls to the wayside? Yeah,
I think if I'm not mistaken, Goldspan's 5 mana. But I agree. Everything you said. Goldspan is like probably one of the best cards in the format. It's as soon as I saw the spoiler for it, it was like, yeah, this card is going to create some big waves. But I agree. I think it's going to compete a little bit for that spot there. Now, but the thing is, as you can more aggressively get, because there's already this dragons. There's already a deck that has the kind of the moniker dragons already, blue-red dragons. So, it might add some variety. The fact that you can cast it for 4 is great.
I do wonder if you could build a shell for a bit more of a blue-red tempo aggressive deck.
Right.
Where you can cast multiple spells. And this is kind of the top end of the deck. Not looking towards an all-run, but looking more towards multiple smaller spells, burn spells, and just getting a lot of damage through very quickly. I wonder if this could you could build a shell around that.
Yeah, I do like the idea of stabilizing the board too. It's the same thing with that. I would almost make an analogy to that dragon egg, the 0/4 that gets counters whenever you cast a non-creature spell, or an instant or sorcery, and then it becomes that awesome 4/4 flying dragon that does 2 damage to any target. Once it's been transformed. So, not to say that it's quite that good, but it fills a similar role. It stabilizes the board earlier. It can block, and it's pretty crazy. Like if you keep this down, I'd say you're going places.
I like it. Next we have Olivia Crimson Bride, kind of the main focus of the set for the Crimson Vow. 6 mana, a red and a black for a 3/4 flying haste, which on its own isn't overly impressive. However, it does, whenever Olivia attacks, you get to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. That can lead to some pretty big blowouts. The one caveat to this is once you stop controlling a legendary vampire, you exile this returned creature. So you do get kind of a graveyard recurring theme. It's nice the graveyard creatures come back attacking already. So the turn you play this, you can bring back a fairly large creature and get 2 attacks through. I think it's just a bit too expensive. I think if it was around the 5 mana cost, it would see some play in the Rakdos. I think 6 is just asking a bit too much.
Yeah, you know what? The nice thing is, Rakdos themed decks tend to be sacrifice decks. So that is a nice way to get good creatures into your graveyard. And then also, Black, of course, has good board sweepers in a number of forms like the, Meat Hook Massacre and whatnot. I think it's kind of a nice, will it see play? I don't actually know. Maybe, but it does represent the opportunity to do a ton of damage. Especially if the board is empty and you have something decent in the graveyard. Getting something back right from the graveyard, including this having haste and flying. I could see it. I could see there being maybe like a 2 of it on the high end of the Rakdos deck, at least to give it a try or something like that. Anyway.
And obviously in limited, if you play this, you've essentially won the game. Is my feeling. If you're getting this and another creature card back attacking, your best creature card, game's going to be over pretty quick.
Yeah, right on. So this is a super cool art to begin with the Overcharged Amalgam. So 2 blue, creature zombie horror. It's a rare. It's a 3/3 with flying and flash. And I think you just turned play on instead of next card.
Technical difficulties.
Flying and flash 3/3, right. So it has Exploit, which is a new mechanic. So Exploit will give you a benefit of some sort if you opt to sacrifice a creature when it comes into play. And it is an option, which is important. So if you do in this case, you get a counterspell. So when Overcharged Amalgam exploits a creature, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. So it does have that versatility. Obviously it's mainly going to be spells to get your value, but if you're desperate, there you go. I think this guy, starting off with limited, is going to be super good. No question about it. Mike made the point earlier, we just went through these quickly, that you can sacrifice itself. It says sacrifice a creature, not another creature. So that's a good point. So it itself, Last Resort is a 4 mana counterspell, right? So they, same thing. Last Resort, if you're willing to spend your rare and your 4 mana, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you can do the standard, you flash in, you eat a creature in limited, that's always good. You can sacrifice a token, counter a spell, then you get a 3/3 flyer out of the deal. Limited obviously is going to be good. As far as constructed goes, we were just talking about how that 4 mana slot is pretty contested. I always like a toolbox card where it can be a counter spell or an aggro type of creature. I'd be surprised if it saw play in constructed, but I think it's at least middle of the road for sure. I love the versatility in the art.
Yeah, I agree. I think in limited this is going to be a bomb. You're going to flash it in, you're going to eat something, you're going to go 2 for 1. It can be both aggressive, defensive. I wouldn't be surprised if this saw some play in some of the Dimir decks there.
Dimir Flash.
Yeah, playing just brings so much versatility, like you were saying. Being able to sacrifice some of those tokens, some of those pest tokens you have for a free counterspell, and then you get a creature out of it. That's a lot for 4 mana. I mean, a 3/3 flying creature and a counterspell for sacrificing like a pest token. That's a big swing. That'll turn the tide of a game there.
For sure. No, I think he's decent anyway. Cool.
Looking up next is Path of Peril. 3 mana, 2 black. It's a sorcery. What it reads is destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. You can pay its cleave cost, which is 6 mana total, a black and a white. If you cast it for the cleave cost, it actually is just destroy all creatures. And so we were talking earlier before the video here, trying to figure out if this is good. There's a lot of competition for kind of wipes in black. You've got the Meat Hook Massacre. You've got Blood on the Snow. Both are very powerful. Both come with other benefits and an enchantment that stays on the battlefield, pinging your opponent, gaining life. Blood on the Snow bringing back your best creature or planeswalker. I do think it could see a lot of sideboard play, at least when you're against those aggressive white decks or the token decks. I don't know how often you'll see a lot of the cleave ability, especially in Standard. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the modal ability, the fact that you can choose is always good, but I mean, it's just like you said, it's such a contested, like the idea of a black board wipe. I mean, there's some really good ones, like Blood on the Snow and Meat Hook Massacre, and it's like, as soon as you put yourself into that, like, you know, it costs a black, and then it's a board wipe. Geez, those are hard to compete with. I mean, as far as limited goes, like I said, I've been playing a lot lately, and one thing I've picked up on is almost any deck, including an aggressive creature deck, you want to. It doesn't seem right, but you want to have these in your deck in case you get behind. I mean, they get something down that you can't attack past. It comes down to that fact that you call it. You call, you know, in this case, you call if it's going to be 2 or less or all creatures, and you also decide when it happens. So, and you know, it's not like any board wipe, even in the aggro decks. You can get 3 for 1 pretty easily. You know, it's not a difficult thing to do, or like 4 for 2 or whatever. But in constructed, I think this spot is too contested. I don't think this card will be played.
I was just thinking as you were talking here, I can't even think of a scenario where I'd want to pay 6 for this as opposed to just paying 6 for Blood on the Snow. Right. And getting back a creature. Mm-hmm. Even though it does have some utility that I could play it a bit earlier, 3 turns earlier, having to splash white to get that utility just isn't worth it.
Right, and yeah, exactly. And it's like, and not to mention it's a new color. You have to have, it's not black for cleave, it's black-white for cleave.
Right.
So, I mean, it further limits it. So, this card, I mean, I'll play it in limited probably most of the time, but I highly doubt it. I'll see it in constructed. Yeah, Runo, also known as Bruno the Stromkirk. I always say that wrong. Strom, I don't know. Anyway, 1 blue black for a legendary vampire cleric, who's a rare, and a 1/4 flyer. Now, when he enters the battlefield, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on the top of your library. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal this card. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, then transform Runo. And we will show his other side in just a moment here. But before that, just this card, face value, assuming that you can't transform him, I would guess that's going to be the case a lot of the time in limited. A 1/4 flyer for 3 is decent. And then also the ability to pick any creature card from your graveyard and put it back in your library. It's a nice little bit of graveyard recursion, especially if you've got some other good, solid creatures in the deck. You want to bring them back. You know, and a solid creature of your choice is always a good draw. I mean, as far as getting, a 6 or greater, I mean, that's already in the graveyard. That's probably not going to be happening that often. That's going to be probably more of a constructed modality there. But if you do it, you get a 3/5 flyer, Crothus, Lord of the Deep, who's a Kraken horror. So whenever he attacks, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. And if that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, you create 2 of those. So, I mean, if it goes off, you're like, I mean, and you got that Serpent, you got him, on the board, and you're doing all this, and it all, the stars align, and all this happened. I mean, you're going to have 2 tokens of a Leviathan, and I mean, you win at that point, So, anyway, yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's a fun card. I think the art is really cool, and it's an interesting mechanic, and his head kind of looks like the Magic the Gathering symbol. I'm just noticing as we're looking at it, but I think, yeah, it's interesting and fun.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable limited card. If you can get it first pack, I think it's a reasonable build around card. I wouldn't try too hard. But it has some decent stats, and getting a creature card from your graveyard back to the top of your deck obviously isn't as good as into your hand, but it has some utility. I don't think it's going to see any standard play, and I'm not overly excited to be first picking this. There's a lot of better rares and uncommons that you can be seeing that I'd take over this.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you.
So next we have Sigardas Summons. 6 mana, 2 white. It's an enchantment. When it comes down, it says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have base power and toughness 4/4, have flying, and are also angels. In the white-green decks that are running around, that they have a lot of +1/+1 counters over a lot of creatures, this can kind of be your alpha strike. It comes down, they all get +4/+4 essentially out of the gates, assuming they're 1/1s to begin with. And then you have a lot of flying, essentially hasted creatures. You're going to alpha strike, you're going to win the game. This is a big casting cost, though. In limited, I think there's too much setup. Have to get both counters and a 6-mana enchantment to potentially get some power boost. And I mean, a lot of these token counter decks are winning well before turn 6. So this is kind of one of those. It seems good, but I don't think it's going to see play just because it's going to be too slow.
Yeah, it's like it's win more. I mean, I think it's because here's like just first principles. It's 6 mana. So anything outside of a limited game, that's got to be a really special card. You've got to, and in this case, I mean, if you have the right deck and you have the whole board set up, then it can. This is the last turn of the game because you'll win. When you have an unbelievable army, it's like if it comes down and you're set up, you win. So you can assume that. So. But the thing is, I mean, if you're in that counters deck anyway, and you've already got a whole board of creatures with counters on them, you're probably already winning because those decks tend to lose, if you've been board swept or something like that. So right. It's quite a bit in terms of the spectrum here. It's a lot win more. It's very expensive, and then also very relevant in terms of first principles here is. If you have nothing, like if you're drawing just off the top of your library on an empty board, it's a dead draw, right? So it does nothing. If you're really far behind, it does nothing. Anyway, so I don't. For me, it's kind of a pass in both realms. I mean, it's going to be in a little bit of a janky deck. I mean, if just for a fun like alpha where you get them down to -80 health, but anyway, yeah, right on. Soren the Mirthless is our next. He is the flagship planeswalker for the set, and he kind of has this little mystique to him. He's got his nice glass of red wine, or is it red wine? Anyway, two black for a legendary planeswalker, Soren, much anticipated, mythic rare, starts with 4 loyalty. So he's +1. Look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card and put it into your hand. If you do, you lose life equal to its mana value. Second ability is -2 to create a 2/3 black vampire with flying and lifelink, and then the -7 is deal 13 to a target and you gain 13. So he's pretty good. I mean, overall, I mean it's not like maybe not the best planeswalker in standard, but I think it's pretty good. The first one is much better by the fact that you may put it into your hand and reveal it. So, I mean, it would just be too much of a gamble if you had to do that and you could draw your bomb and hit yourself for 6 or whatever. So you may is great. And then he gets the +1. You get, 1 is the knowledge of what's the top card of your library, and 2, you get +1 on your planeswalker loyalty automatically. And then the rest is you may. So, I mean, certainly decent in terms of, checkbox number 1, which is card advantage. And then for the second ability, making that 2/3 black vampire with flying and lifelink, that's actually really nice because it can protect itself in the same way that Ren and 7, those tokens have reach. You can really protect your planeswalker with that. And then if you end up trading that black vampire, you do get the lifelink, you get the benefit of your life. So probably what will end up happening is, depending on the board state, you get your either your vampire or your car right off the bat. And yeah, I think he'll be good a lot of the time. I think, in a deck that can play a black, probably a lot of the time this would be something you want to include in your deck. Especially, limited, obviously, going to be really good.
Yeah, limited bomb. You pick this, you switch to black if you get this second pack. In Constructed, I compare this a lot to the Spider Planeswalker and really seeing what it does. Both are negative abilities, create tokens. When you get 2/1 with menaces and reach. This one you get a 2/3 flying token with lifelink. Both have their utility. For the Spider Planeswalker, the +0, you get to draw a card, lose a life. Here it's actually +1, so you can increase your loyalty and still draw a card. So they're quite similar in that respect. And both their ultimates are kind of game-winning bombs. I'm actually a fan of Soren more, I think, because of it costs one less to cast rather. You get this out on turn 4. You get a 2/3 flying lifelink creature. Threatens their planeswalkers. Is a good blocker for Soren. And then you can start plussing him, drawing cards, gaining life. This can be a lot of value. And I could actually see it being played in Standard.
Yeah, I think he checks a lot of the boxes, like we said. His casting cost is reasonable. He can protect himself. He can offer card advantage, and then his ultimate is essentially game winning. So he's kind of, he's not like the best of the best, but he checks a lot of the boxes. So that's good. I like it.
Nice. Next, I'm a huge fan of this card, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So 2 mana, 1 white, comes in as a 2/1 first strike. So in a white aggressive deck, that's reasonable. 2 mana, 2/1 first strike is good. But the icing on the cake is the non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. This delays their All-Run's Epiphany by a turn, delays their Planeswalkers by a turn, and most importantly, a lot of times in these white aggro decks, delays their board sweepers by a turn. Can keep you alive for 1 turn, and sometimes that's all you need, is that 1 additional turn of attacking to actually get their life total to 0. So I think not as good in Limited. In Limited, I think it's a lot more of the time just going to be a 2/1 first strike, which is fine. But I think in Standard, it has a good shell to go into, a high-tier deck to begin with, and I think this starts to solve some of the issues the white deck already has. So I'm a big fan of this card.
Yeah, the other white cards, I'm with you on that. I think this is going to be way, way better in Constructed. When you're have that theme, you're white, you're going all out, and you're just trying to duck and dodge away to these these board sweepers.
Dodge a wrench.
That's right. So yeah, Limited, it's going to be a shoulder shrug. But in Constructed, I think it'll probably see play. Because the white deck does like these kind of cards. Like Redain, has that kind of disruption ability. And then, what's his name? The Spell Seeker, Paulo Vitor's card, whatever, has a similar thing. You pull something out of their hand, make it more expensive. So it seems like that's, as far as disrupting them, white seems to like to make things cost more for your opponent. So, this fits nicely with that. And 2/1 first strike, it's hard to block, especially if you get Luminarch Aspirant with it. Because that's maybe one of the downsides in the deck is that you could start clogging on 2-drops because there are some good ones that already exist, including Luminarch. But I think it's good. I would be, especially early on in this format, I bet you're going to see a lot of decks that run this card. And then, we'll see how the format evolves to see if it sticks.
Like where I see, I agree. The 2-drop spot is quite contested here. I think you're going to see it for that 2 mana 2/2 spirit that creates 1/1 flying spirits when you cast 2 spells a turn. Mm-hmm. But I actually think this does more. I think having the first strike, both have 2 power, and the fact that this is going to delay their cards, and actually stacks with the Spellbinder card. Mm-hmm. Right, if you remove from their hand one of their instants or sorceries,
sure.
Adding 2 to the cost and then adding another 1 to the cost, sometimes the all-runs just become unplayable at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the thing is, largely when you're racing in Standard, 1 mana means 1 turn. Right? Because that's the limiting factor with a lot of these blue decks is they just, they can only play one land a turn, right? So I like it. I think, and at very, very least, it'll probably be a sideboard card for your mono white deck against control type decks that you really want to slow them down.
And let's be clear, against the blue decks, a lot of these counter spells are just good enough to be played. So if you start costing them one more to cast and they have to hold up 4 mana to counter something, it's just not worth it. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, and very last point would be, just thinking out loud about other cards it's going to disrupt, like Asika's Chariot is a non-creature spell. It's an artifact vehicle, and then there's, Planeswalkers running 7. I mean, because green is obnoxious right now, right? But yeah, very cool.
The Ranger class as well. Mm-hmm. If you go first, they can't play the Ranger class on 2.
Exactly.
That's a huge deal.
For sure. All right, next we have Mr. Torrens, the Fist of the Angels, coming in with his glowing mace, ready to rock. He's a 1, a green, and a white for a legendary human cleric, rare. He's a 2/2 with training, which is a new mechanic in this set. So the training mechanic reads, whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1 counter on this creature. And whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human soldier token with training. So overall, it's kind of cool. I mean, this is one of those cards that I feel like is a little bit more fun and flavor rather than like super competitive. Because I mean, he could go like what he does fits in the Selesnya shell. He does a good. You can train an army of 1/1s that also have training over time. The more you cast, the more you get. So that's great. And it's obviously going to want to be an aggressive deck. The training mechanic necessitates that in the first place. Which again fits the Selesnya shell, of course. And then I wonder if this is in that what we mentioned a while back about this counters deck, which doesn't see much play right now, but exists. And then in limited, it's going to be reasonable. But the thing is, I bet you in limited, a lot of the time you're going to just have him sit back and just be your like generator of more creatures, because a lot of the time they're going to have a 3-power creature, and then the first time he attacks he'll trade. So a lot of the time you're probably going to want to just leave him back and just keep generating that army of 1/1s with training.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hesitant. I don't think he's going to see a lot of play in standard. I think he's too slow. On his own, he's a 2/2 for 3 with training. That's not overly impressive. And I would hope he'd have better ways to generate 1/1 tokens than having him cast a creature spell and have him on the board already. I think there's probably better things you can be doing with your mana. Mm-hmm. In limited, he can take over a game. If he just sits back, like you said, it's a long stalled out game. You generate a lot of 1/1s, and you can kind of go for the alpha strike again. So I'm not a huge fan of him, but I could see him. I'd probably play him in limited if he was my first pick.
Oh, for sure. No, you'll
play him, but
yeah, limited is tough because it's like he necessitates 2 colors, which is hard to plan around. And green white did not see a lot of play in this draft format for Midnight Hunt, but I like him overall, but I mean middle of the road somewhat.
Next we have Toxrill the Corrosive, 7 mana, 2 black, legendary creature Slug Horror, comes down as a 7/7. So 7 mana, 7/7. I love the flavor of this. I love the picture of this, and I'm a big fan of this card. At the beginning of each end step, so yours and theirs, you put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. And then creatures you don't control get -1/-1 counters for each slime counter on them. So whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, you get a 1/1 black slug creature token, and then you can sacrifice those slugs to draw a card. I actually think in limited a lot of time you're not going to be sacrificing the slugs. I think this is just fine in any black deck. I don't think you have to play it in a black-blue deck. I think getting a 7/7 that at the end of every single turn their creatures get a -1/-1 counter on them, I think that alone is great. And the fact that they generate slugs once they die, I don't think you have to force blue. I mean, I think that's just icing on the cake. But if you're not winning with him down as a 7/7 and their creature's getting smaller every turn, I don't think you drawing cards is what's going to win you the game in that case.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point, actually, that you don't need that blue necessarily. I totally agree. Just as a magic card, like in all of the elements you can talk about a magic card, this is cool. It's got cool art, flavor, The name is interesting, and then just it's like one of those times where they did a perfect job taking some kind of weird flavor of like things getting slimed and infected with like parasitic slugs, and then when they die, they produce more slugs. Super cool on all fronts. But yeah, I mean, this is what a 7-drop should really look like. I mean, it's just, and then it's every turn. It's your turn right after you play it. They all get -1s, and then at the end of their turn too.
That being said, terrible in standard.
Right. Yes. Awful. Awful. Unplayable.
But this is the definition of like a mythic feeling limited card, right? This comes down, awesome flavor. It's going to win you the game. If they don't have a removal spell, and you have more than one life, you're going to win the game here.
Yeah. Limited. Lots of fun. Constructed. Probably not. Okay. This is another really, really cool card. Uvenwald Oddity. So it's 4 casting cost total with 2 green for a beast creature, a rare. So 4/4 trample haste face value. So that's pretty good. I mean, in any format, I mean that's decent. I mean, if you can get somebody on the board, good toughness, good power, doing damage right away, is relevant on the spot. I mean, it's worth 4 mana. That's pretty good. I mean, again, if you're comparing it to the best of the best, like a Seaga's Chariot, maybe it's not so good like at that face value, but this can transform with 7. So for 5 green, we can flip to the other side. Go ahead. Okay, so then we get the Behemoth version of it, which is like, again, just insane art, just some like psychedelic, like acid trip, nightmare horror art. Kind of reminds me of The Thing. It's got that like open maw, abdomen, crazy. A little bit of Kingdom Death Monster in there. So anyway, on the other side, this is an 8/8 trample haste, and other creatures you control have +1/+1 and trample and haste. So probably what you're going to want to hope to do if you're in any kind of board stall is you just maybe wait a turn if it's in limited. At the end of their turn, you pay that. Let's go back here. So, you do your activated ability at the end of their turn. You transform it right on the spot. Then you can play something else on your own turn, and then that creature gets haste as well as trample, and that's hopefully your alpha strike turn. So basically, in summary, it's just like a 4/4 that's reasonable value, very good, the kind of card you want to play up front, and then you get this crazy like game-ending bomb at the end.
Yeah, I love this card. Obviously, if you transform it, you're gonna win the game, right? Like an 8/8 trample haste and a lord for all creatures, regardless of type, you're gonna win the game if that comes down. But I think the most important thing is that its face side is standard playable, right? Like a 4/4 trample haste. A lot of the issues with the green decks right now are that they don't have trample. Run in 7's tokens don't have trample. Sometimes you're just being like chump blocked by 1/1 creature tokens. Yeah, I mean the werewolf pack leader, unless you pay mana, doesn't have trample. The chariot doesn't have trample. I think this kind of fills a void where for 4 mana you're getting a lot. Trample haste 4 mana. If that's all it does, you never get to 7. That's fine. But like you were saying, if you hit that stalled board state, or you do have a little bit of ramp to transform, game's over at that point and you win. I'm a huge fan of this card.
Yeah, nice thing if you get, the bane of green is like getting your board swept. And I mean, you could come back, but I think, having this as your comeback, like if you had that in hand and then you can transform it later, it's insane. Okay, let's keep rolling.
Okay, next we have Volatile Arsonist, 5 mana, 2 red, creature, human, werewolf, which is obviously important right now in standard in the Werewolf Gruul deck. 4/4, Menace Haste. So you get a 5 mana 4/4 with Menace and Haste. Quite good in aggressive red or aggressive green-red deck. More importantly, when it attacks, so even on its first turn, it deals 1 damage to anything you want. Creature, player, planeswalker. That's good for killing the planeswalker with 1 life left, so you can deal his attack to the face, picking off some of those small chump blockers, or just making blocks very uncomfortable for the other player. And then obviously can transform as just a werewolf into Dire Strain Anarchist.
It's a tough one. Anarchist.
If I could read, that would be beneficial. 5/5 with Menace and Haste. So again, +1/+1 over top of his face card. but when it attacks, it deals 2 damage to anything. So again, picking off planeswalkers, killing 2/2s, or just dealing 2 damage to the face, right? If they only have 1 creature out, and this comes down as Knight, you're attacking, they can't block, you deal 7 damage to the face. A lot of times that's just game. I think this is going to see a ton of play. Does it feel mythic to me in terms of kind of flavor? Probably not. But I think that's where it needs to be. I think this is going to take over limited events, and I think this is very, very much constructed playable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in constructed, it's probably not going to be like best of the best, but it's going to be. I think that it at its best is that it's that time where either you can do 5 damage on the attack with menace, and then either 2 damage to their face, or kill one of their 2 toughness creatures. Then they can no longer block it, because it has the menace ability. I think it's going to be for sure. I mean, you're playing limited for sure. First pick.
Easily.
If not before that.
Pack 0.
So this guy, Gralnock the Omnivore, and we talked about the eating habits of frogs in our little preamble here. So they are usually mostly carnivorous, I think. But anyway, this guy's an omnivore. He's not picky.
Well, that's why they have to clarify.
That's right. He'll eat anything. So 2, a green and a blue for Gralnock the Omnivore, who's a legendary frog and a rare. He's a 3/3. So when any frog you control attacks, assuming you've got some frogs, you can mill 3. Your Pepsi's going to explode. Okay, when any frog you control attacks, mill 3. So unfortunately, can't do that the first time it comes out. So whenever a permanent card is put into your graveyard from your library, it's through this mill ability, which I like how they call it mill now, exile it with a croak counter on it. So you can play lands and cast spells from among cards you own in exile with croak counters on them. So if you can get this guy online and attacking and survive, because unfortunately you lose the ability to use this croak counter ability if he's dead. It's not an emblem or something of that nature. Then you're going to be getting a ton of cards. I mean, if this guy's attacking, you're going to get a huge amount of value. But I mean, trying to actually he's only 3 toughness, doesn't do anything the turn he drops. I think it's kind of more just for fun. And then the same thing with limited. He's going to run into that problem. You get to attack with him, and you mill those cards. But then he dies probably. Then you can't use him unless you happen to turn over an instant or something, and you protect him in that way. But he's one of those cards where his kind of tragic flaw is he has to attack and he's going to die. So I mean, cool and fun, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe I would say playable, but I mean he's got in both limited or stand constructed. I mean he's not going to be played. Probably. I mean as far as I'm concerned, but. You could probably build around him in some fun way in limited.
I mean, 3/3 for 4 in limited is fine. And if you get even 1 card back, then that's a great value in limited. Constructed obviously is trash. I do wonder if he had evasion, if he had say menace or flying, or
much better.
Like Island Walk, that's kind of going back a little while.
I think that one's out of date. Yeah.
But if he had some sort of evasion, I think this would be a bomb in limited. As is, I think a lot of times it's going to be a 4/4 for 3. Nope, 3/3 for 4 with some upside. So I'm not a huge fan.
But what if you have more frogs?
Well, if you can build a pure frog tribal deck in limited, I think you're looking good. But that's it for our spoilers on Halloween here for Innistrad Crimson Vow. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a comment below. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on what we've said and how excited you are for the set.
For sure. This was fun. We should do it again sometime.
Sometime later this week. But we'll be coming out with more videos, draft videos, full color rankings for limited, for constructed, and doing some standard decks as well. So for sure, stay tuned, come back, and have a happy Halloween.
Yeah, and we're a brand new channel, so if you want to support, like and subscribe. We'll keep making it. Oh, and comment. I mean, if this is totally new, we were literally setting up the microphone and everything today. So if you have any feedback, I'm all ears.
Okay.
All right, later.